it's very difficult to detach the sexual component from the stigma that's associated with HIV. And I think that it's also important to be able to distinguish between sort of stigma, sort of old-fashioned HIV stigma, which is the, oh, I won't touch your hand, or I don't want to eat at your table and share your utensils, with the more nuanced stigma that gay men experience from HIV prevention and public health and from other gay men, which is a cultural element of stigma. And I think most of us are sort of skilled at encountering the old-fashioned stigma and responding to it, but I think a lot of gay men are still struggling when they receive stigma from their own community, and it's very personal. And much of it, if not all of it, is rooted in sex. Realize I'm talking a little sort of theoretically, so I'll put it in a personal context. So when I tested positive, it was quite a while ago. It was 22 years ago. And the reaction from mostly older gay men was one of blame and judgment and really, castigating me for being, quote, stupid enough or reckless enough to let this happen to myself and to betray, if you will, my community and all those that had come before me and worked so hard to make sure that I didn't get HIV. And unfortunately, I think much of that sentiment hasn't changed in the past 22 years. And so it only feeds this sense of dread and guilt and shame that people living with HIV experience. And most of the people, almost every person I've ever talked to who's tested positive, their first reaction is one of shame and guilt. And we haven't done anything to fix that in 37 years. And I think the reason that they feel ashamed and guilty is because they participated in a behavior, they had condomless sex, which is seen by everyone, and in particular prevention and public health, as being the worst possible thing you could ever do. And so of course they're gonna feel like they did this to themselves. Of course they're gonna feel responsible. And I think that we have to be able to put this in a context of the very complex lives that gay men lead. And I think in the context, in the example of sort of gay men in the US, I'd like to use this as an example. For if the lifetime risk of HIV for Black gay men in the US is 1 in 2, that risk exists before you even get up in the morning, right? And so the idea that you're somehow to blame if you get HIV in a world in which your risk is 1 in 2 seems so ridiculously absurd, but we're still attached to the idea of assigning blame when HIV happens. And that's where we have to move the conversation to understanding that HIV is going to happen. It's a reality in the world in which we live. I think at the end of the day, it really is about giving gay men as much information as possible so they can make informed decisions about their health and their sexuality. And that's it. That's where we have to cut the cord. That's where we have to stop being paternalistic. And whatever they do and whatever the outcome, they have to be ensured that the community will still be there to support them. The community will still be there to provide resources and support, regardless of what happens to them. And I think that unfortunately we haven't constructed a community that does that. There's plenty of caveats and there's plenty of castigation based on people's behavior, and not to mention the stigma associated with sex and condomless sex. And so I think that we have to challenge ourselves to be able to say, we're gonna let you do what you wanna do, and we're still gonna be there.